The room was silent except for the sharp rhythm of strikes cutting through the air, focused, precise, almost hypnotic. Everyone watching knew they were witnessing something rare. Bruce Lee in his element, completely locked into his training. Then suddenly, without warning, a man stepped forward and interrupted him mid-motion. No hesitation, no respect for the moment, just a bold, almost reckless challenge that froze everyone in place. You could feel the tension shift instantly. What was supposed to be a routine session turned into something no one expected. For a split second, even the air felt heavier. Because when you interrupt a legend like that, there are only two possible outcomes. And what happened next left every single person in that room completely stunned. The moment the stranger stepped forward, the entire energy of the room shifted in an instant. Bruce Lee was in the middle of a focused training sequence, his movements sharp, fluid, and almost impossible to track with the naked eye. Every strike carried precision, every step carried purpose, and the silence around him only amplified the intensity of his presence. Those watching knew better than to interrupt. This wasn't just practice, it was discipline in its purest form. But the stranger didn't seem to care. Without warning, he crossed the invisible boundary that no one else dared to approach, his footsteps echoing louder than they should have in the stillness of the room. At first, it almost felt unreal, like a mistake that would be corrected in seconds. A few people exchanged glances, unsure whether to react or stay frozen. Interrupting someone like Bruce Lee wasn't just disrespectful, it was unpredictable. The stranger carried himself with a strange mix of confidence and impatience, as if he had something to prove and no time to wait. He didn't bow, didn't speak with caution, didn't show the slightest sign of hesitation. Instead, he stepped directly into the space where Bruce Lee was moving, forcing the flow of training to break. The rhythm stopped, the air changed. Bruce Lee's motion paused, not abruptly, but with a controlled stillness that felt even more powerful than his strikes. His eyes shifted toward the stranger, calm yet piercing, as if analyzing not just the man's presence but his intent. There was no anger on his face, no visible frustration, only awareness. The kind of awareness that made the room feel smaller, tighter, more intense. Everyone watching could sense it. This was no longer just a training session. Something else had begun. The stranger spoke, his tone edged with challenge, though not loud enough to break the quiet dominance of the room. It wasn't the words themselves that mattered. It was the way he said them. The underlying message that questioned skill, authority, and reputation all at once. A bold move, especially in front of witnesses who had spent years respecting the discipline they were now seeing disrupted. Some shifted uncomfortably, others leaned forward slightly, unable to look away. Moments like this didn't happen twice. Bruce Lee didn't respond immediately. His silence stretched just long enough to build pressure, to let the weight of the interruption settle fully into the space. His posture remained relaxed yet ready, like a coiled spring that didn't need to prove its strength. The stranger stood firm, refusing to step back, refusing to break eye contact. It was no longer about training, it was about presence, control, and the unspoken rules that had just been challenged. The tension grew thicker with every passing second, as if the room itself was waiting for something inevitable to unfold, something that would define not just the stranger's boldness but the true depth of Bruce Lee's mastery. For a few seconds, nothing moved, yet everything changed. The interruption had already broken the rhythm, but what followed wasn't chaos. It was something far more controlled, far more deliberate. Bruce Lee didn't react the way anyone expected. No sudden aggression, no immediate display of dominance. Instead, he allowed the silence to expand, almost as if he was letting the stranger's energy reveal itself completely. The room, once filled with motion and sound, now felt suspended in a strange stillness that pulled everyone deeper into the moment. The stranger shifted his stance, trying to maintain his confidence, but something subtle had already changed. It wasn't visible to an untrained eye, but those who understood discipline could feel it instantly. Bruce Lee's presence wasn't just physical, it was psychological. Without lifting a hand, without raising his voice, He had already taken control of the situation. His posture remained relaxed, shoulders loose, breathing steady. Yet there was an unmistakable readiness in the way he stood. It was the kind of calm that didn't invite conflict but could end it instantly if needed. Then, with almost imperceptible movement, Bruce Lee adjusted his position. It wasn't dramatic. In fact, many could have missed it if they blinked, but the effect was undeniable. The stranger's focus wavered for a fraction of a second, just enough to show that he wasn't fully in control anymore. It was like watching a game where one player didn't need speed or force to gain the advantage, only timing and awareness. The shift in atmosphere became heavier, more intense, as if every person in the room realized they were witnessing something beyond a simple confrontation. The stranger attempted to regain his footing, his confidence pushing him forward again. But now his movements felt different, slightly forced, slightly rushed. In contrast, Bruce Lee remained effortless. There was no tension in his body, no sign of pressure in his expression. He wasn't reacting. He was observing, calculating, understanding. The difference between the two became clearer with every passing second. One was trying to prove something, while the other had nothing to prove at all. Without warning, the distance between them shifted again, not through a visible strike, but through control of space itself. Bruce Lee closed the gap in a way that felt almost unreal, so smooth and precise that it left the stranger momentarily disoriented. It wasn't about overpowering him. It was about showing him how easily control could be taken. A subtle movement of the hand, a slight adjustment of balance, and suddenly the stranger was no longer dictating the moment. Gasps were held back, breaths paused mid-air. The observers could feel it, the realization settling in that this was not a clash of equals. The stranger's earlier boldness now seemed fragile, exposed under the weight of a mastery that didn't need to shout to be recognized. Bruce Lee's reaction wasn't loud, wasn't explosive, but it was undeniable. It shifted the entire atmosphere from tension to understanding, from challenge to quiet dominance, leaving everyone present with a clear sense of who truly controlled the moment. What lingered in the room wasn't fear or shock alone, it was realization. The kind that settles quietly but deeply, changing how you see strength, control, and mastery itself. Bruce Lee hadn't raised his voice, hadn't lashed out, hadn't tried to humiliate the stranger in front of everyone. And yet, the lesson delivered in those few moments carried more weight than any aggressive display ever could. The tension that once filled the air began to dissolve, replaced by a quiet understanding that true power doesn't rush to prove itself. It reveals itself through restraint. The stranger who had stepped forward with confidence now stood in a completely different state. Not broken, not defeated in a dramatic sense, but changed. His posture softened, his energy no longer sharp and confrontational, but uncertain, reflective. It was as if he had just realized that strength isn't measured by how boldly you step into someone's space, but by how deeply you understand your own. No one needed to say it out loud. The shift was visible in his eyes, in the way he no longer tried to dominate the moment. Around them, the observers absorbed everything in silence. Some had trained for years, thinking they understood discipline. Others were newer, still learning the basics. But in that single exchange, everyone witnessed something beyond technique. They saw the difference between skill and mastery. Skill can impress, it can dominate, overwhelm, and even intimidate. But mastery operates on another level. It controls not just the body, but the environment, the energy, the very pace of a situation. And that's what made this moment unforgettable. Bruce Lee's calm presence became the center of that lesson. He didn't move to embarrass the stranger or to escalate the situation further. Instead, he held the space with quiet authority, allowing the meaning of what had just happened to sink in naturally. It was a form of teaching that didn't rely on words. No lecture, no explanation, just a demonstration so clear that it left no room for misunderstanding. The kind of demonstration that stays with you long after the moment passes. For the stranger, this wasn't just an interruption gone wrong. It was a turning point, whether he realized it fully in that instant or not. He had come forward to challenge, to test, to perhaps gain recognition. But what he received instead was something far more valuable, a glimpse into a level of control he hadn't yet reached. And sometimes that kind of lesson is more powerful than any victory. The room remained quiet, but the silence now carried respect rather than tension. People straightened their posture slightly, as if reminded of what true discipline looked like. There was no applause, no dramatic reaction, just a shared awareness that they had witnessed something rare. A moment where ego was quietly dismantled, not through force but through understanding, leaving behind a powerful reminder that real mastery speaks in calm, controlled actions rather than loud, impulsive displays.